Hi, everybody. Hey, Heather. Thank you guys for being here. Hi, everyone. You know you're a teacher when you start something and you're like, ooh, we can't waste any time. Let me put a bell ringer up on the board. Hi. Thank you, Heather. All right, so I'm asking you guys in the comments to write down a word that your children struggle to remember, and I might do a couple of them during one part of tonight. Hi, everyone. Hi, and I'm going to get started in just a minute because I don't want to keep you guys too long. If you're like, wow, she looks so much more tired than she looked in August. It's true. It's very true. I'm back at school now, so it's definitely a different vibe right now, but I'm really excited to be here. So thank you, everybody. Gerald. Okay, friends, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I've written down a couple of your suggestions for words that your kiddos struggle with, so let's just do it. All right. So tonight we are going to be talking about orthographic mapping. And if you're anything like me, then you've heard this word for a while and you may have like struggled for a while to figure out what it means. It kind of slipped and slid around in my head for probably about a year before I really understood what it meant. And so tonight, what I wanted to do is just share some things that I've learned and hope that maybe I can clarify some things for you. So our objectives tonight are twofold. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to define orthographic mapping and discuss why it's critical to reading success. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know that we're back in school now and your time is precious. And the best thing I can do is give you something that you can do with your kids tomorrow. So number two is going to be, we are going to be practicing several different activities that you can use in your classroom. There have been a couple of different resources that were really helpful for me when planning this. I have created a Google Slides, and I will share the link with you guys at the end of this. And it has this presentation in it with the links already embedded. So I would say that chapter 4 in David Kilpatrick's Equipped for Reading Success was very helpful in understanding orthographic mapping. Also, this Reading League YouTube video about orthographic mapping, and then there's a David Kilpatrick YouTube video about orthographic mapping. I have watched them a couple of times, just trying to get it going through my head, and they're all in the resources section. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So I will make sure that I put the link to the Google Slides inside the information for this live. All right, friends. So we need to start by sort of thinking about this notion about how we learn to read. There has been a notion for a very long time that we learn to read by kind of taking a mental picture of a word, right? So it makes sense. We see the written letters on the page and we take a picture of the word in our mind. And then when we need to access it again, we sort of bring up that mental picture. It's like the Cam Jansen of the world, right? So I want us to test that theory a little bit. I'm going to ask you to take a mental picture of this, and I'm going to give you guys about 10 seconds to do that. All right, go. Now, I want you to write in the comments, what did you see? What is the mental picture that you were able to put together for this? And I'm going to sit here and wait a second and look at the comments. Okay, so Lindsay said that she saw $1.73. Okay, so a lot of people have added up. Were any of you able to just remember what exactly was in the picture? So we have dollar bills with coins on top. Yes. So here's the deal. If reading were truly just like this visual task, right? And every word we came across was a picture, we would have to be doing something like this every single time we saw a word. We would have to take this mental picture and think about just how difficult that would be. If we have like 20 to 70,000 words in our vocabulary, there's no way that we have just taken mental pictures of all of it. It's impossible. I couldn't even, and I've looked at this picture now 1,000 times, and I still can't tell you which way the coins are facing, what all the coins are. And that's just not how we learn to read. Let me give you another example. If you are on my Instagram, I posted this on Monday. But if we truly took mental pictures every time of every word, we would have to then remember a word in every single font that's out there, whether it's in print or cursive, uppercase or lowercase. So every single word that we know, we would have to have mental pictures in all those different ways. And it just doesn't work like that. And now that I'm talking about it, it seems so obvious. We can't just take pictures. But when I first was teaching reading, I truly thought that if I just flashed a word at a child enough times, they were going to learn it, because I was like, oh, they just have to get that in their head. They just have to get that in their head. And I literally, shouldn't even admit it, but I remember sitting in a parent teacher conference with a first grade parent and saying, there's some words that we just have to memorize. And guys, that's not how it works. So let me stop talking about how it doesn't work and start talking to you about how our brains do work. And it's so cool that we have brain scans and brain research, and we actually know the process that goes on when we're learning to read. And that process is called orthographic mapping. Orthographic mapping is the mental process we use to permanently store words for immediate, effortless retrieval. So keep in mind, this is a mental process. It's not just an activity. So we can do activities that promote this, but it's really important to keep in mind that this is something that's happening in a child's head, and it's not something that we can like force upon them. A lot of children will naturally orthographically map. And so I think that's why it's been hidden for so long, because some children don't need the explicit instruction to promote this process. And I also want to point out that orthographic mapping helps us to have effortless retrieval. Orthographic mapping simply is how we make words sight words. It is how we know a word like that. And that is what we want for all of our children. So how does it happen? It's funny because we think that it's really a visual task, but orthographic mapping and learning to have and getting sight words into our permanent memory happens to start with sound. So this cute little child that I found on the internet with no copyrights, he knows the word sand, right? This is a word that is in his vocabulary. He knows the sounds to it. He knows the phonemes in sand. And what happens then, he also knows his alphabet. He knows his letter sounds. So when you know the sounds in a word, and you can then match them to the letters that represent that sound, that is when we have that orthographic mapping, when it happens instantly. So he knows that s, and, d, it says sand. And then because that is a familiar word to him and it's a meaningful word to him, and he knows his letter sounds, he is then able to map it onto the letters. If you're a little bit confused, that's okay. It takes a while to really understand this process. So let's talk a little bit more. If you're in the United States, these letter strings should be immediately recognizable to you. You don't have to think about what they are, they just jump off the page. And these are some examples from Kilpatrick's book. You know that the FBI, NBA, NFL, what they are without thinking about it. It's because they are familiar to you and they are a meaningful letter string to you. Now, if I took the letter strings and I twisted them around, it's no longer meaningful to you. So the orthographic mapping happens when we have letter strings that are familiar and meaningful, and we can map the sounds to them. So, and I swear the theory is going to be done real fast, y'all. What happens is when we have these meaningful letter strings, they become unitized. Instead of seeing s, and d as four separate sounds, all of a sudden that little boy sees it as a unit. And likewise, if I know the word light and I have orthographically mapped it, I know that it's I, t, it's now a unit to me. Think about how much easier it's going to be for me to then be able to know tight, fright, might, sight. Because I have learned this has become unitized in my brain, these ones are going to become much easier for me to orthographically map as long as they're in my vocabulary. So what does this all mean? Like, I've talked to you a lot about theory, but what does it mean for us as teachers? It means this: our instruction has to focus on helping children know how the sounds in the language that we speak get matched to the symbols on the page. That's the biggie. And what we're lacking a lot of is we're lacking the sound part. When we flash sight words to kids, we're expecting them to do something visual without attaching it to sounds. So Kilpatrick says that children who struggle with phoneme awareness struggle in reading. Why? Because they do not notice the logical, meaningful relationship between the word's pronunciation and the letters used to represent that pronunciation in print. This makes words extremely difficult to remember. We will always have children who struggle if we do not help them become phonemically aware. It's that simple. So please, before I get into the different strategies that we can do, I want us to stop doing the sight word flashcards. It does not matter how many times we flash a word at a child if all we're doing is expecting them to take a mental picture of this card. They're not going to be successful. And in the same vein, these little things on here, I don't know what they're called, but it's this notion that goes with we remember things by sight, where like the boxes are the height of the letters. And it's this idea that, oh, well, if we give them that, then they'll remember it. It's useless, guys. I'm sorry if you've done it. I've done it. It's useless. Don't do it anymore. So let's talk about some better things that we can do. I have 5 things that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to have this PowerPoint up in the comments, so you'll be able to see it. I'm going to start by talking about phonemic awareness instruction. I will not belabor this because this is something I've talked about a lot. This is something that I've talked about a lot, but I just want to reinforce that you don't have to have a curriculum. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a program. If you want to help support your children with phonemic awareness, take the spelling words that you're already using in your class. Practice segmenting and blending words before you put them into print. But I also want to say this: we have to get them to the print. We can't just do sounds forever, because remember, the act of reading happens when we are able to take the sounds and match them to the print. So let's talk about some activities. Now, sound symbol mapping is probably my favorite activity to use to practice to help promote orthographic mapping with our students. So I'm just going to go ahead and practice a lot of them, or several of them. People have asked me a lot how, Wendy, I'm sorry you can't share the video right now because this is a private group, but what I'll do is I'll upload it to YouTube. Yes, Meredith, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is we are going to practice several different words on here so I can show you how they are mapped. We're going to start with an easier one, and then we'll get into some trickier ones. And if we have time, you can put in some words that you would like. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do irregular spelled words. So this is just typical phonetically regular words right now. And yes, I bought a document camera just for this presentation, in case y'all were wondering. So when I am doing this sound symbol mapping with my students, I say a word, bat, you repeat the word, bat. Then we tap it, b-a-t. What we do next is we highlight the number of boxes that we are going to use. So since there were 3 sounds, we are going to have 3 boxes. Then each box represents one sound, no matter how many letters go into or part of that sound. So for bat, it's a really simple one. B, a, t. Okay, I just wanted to get an easy one out of the way. Now let's get crazy, friends. The next word that we're going to do is crash. So I say it, crash. You say it, crash. Then I'm going to tap the sounds k, sh. 4 sounds. So we highlight 4 boxes. Each box represents one sound, one grapheme, no matter how many letters make up that sound. So sh, crash. Now, I chose this word on purpose because it has both a digraph and a blend. Blends will always be at least 2 boxes. So blends like pull, cl, tur, sn, and the triple blends would be 3 boxes, stir, skr, okay? They keep their own sounds. But digraphs are one sound, and that's things like sh, ch, h, k, okay? So the question is, do I tell them how many sounds are in the word first and they just copy you? So it kind of depends. You know, when we think about the guided release of responsibility, I might start by just modeling it and doing all of it myself. And then we'd move on to maybe doing some of it together before I release them on their own. It really depends on where I'm at in the lesson, but in the very beginning, you have to do a lot of modeling of this. All right, Rebecca, I've written those words down. Okay, friends, the next word that we are going to do is the word steak. So I say it, steak, you say it, steak. Then we tap it, st, a, k. 4 sounds, 4 boxes. So we have a blend again. St, a, k. Now here's the deal. You're going to be like, how do they know that it's EA? And they're not. So we have to explicitly teach children the way that different sounds are spelled. So in my classroom, we talk about the number of ways that words are represented. So at the beginning of a lesson is actually my 3rd step. I would say something along the lines of, how many ways do we know to write the A sound? And whatever we've written to that point, we would do like A consonant E, A-I, A-Y, E-A. Maybe those are the ones that we know right now. Okay, so when we get to steak, there's going to be some of them that it can't be. Like we know it can't be A-Y because that's represented at the end. We know it's probably not going to be A because it's in the middle of a single syllable word. So then my children are able to narrow it down to these 3 different graphemes. And what we do at that point, and I don't know if this is the right way, so y'all can tell me if it's wrong, but what I do is I say, yes, it could be any one of those, but it's going to be EA for this one. So there's a question that says, can you test students on their sight words first to see which words they don't have automatically mapped and need to be explicitly mapped? So I think anytime I'm working on a new phonics rule, I'm going to have them do it. I am an interventionist, so most of the time the rules that I'm working with, they are not very familiar with. All right, let's do maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's do, we have to do a magic E. Everybody was asked about magic E. So the next word that we're going to do is the word poke. Okay, poke. I say it, poke. You say it. Now we're going to tap the sounds. Poke. 3 sounds. 3 boxes. All right, so oh. Now, the E is not a separate sound, so it does not get its own box. We only give boxes for sounds. So I put the E in the same box. Some people put it little, some people put it down here. I like to see it visually all in the same row. That's just a personal choice. And then I draw an arrow from the E to the vowel that it's making say its own name. And that's how I handle magic E. Lindsay, when I do TH, yes, I explain voiced and voiceless with them. And I found that even the kindergartners can handle this. So if you take the time to do, like the voice box thing, they really do get it. And I just teach them from the start that it has multiple sounds. One more like this, and then we're going to move on to words that are not regularly spelled. Let's go ahead and do the word guess. Okay, guess. I know that sounds like a weird one, but I have a reason. Guess. G, S. 3 sounds. Now, what's going to happen? Those of you who are writing things into the comments, I am writing the words down that you're recommending to see how many I can get to. So the word guess, what they're going to do is they're going to end up saying G, S. And this is such a great teaching point for children. We can celebrate like, oh my goodness, you did the 2 S's because you remembered the floss rule. But what do we know about the G when it's followed by an E, I, or Y? And they're going to say, oh, gentle Cindy would say J. So what we say is, that's right. So did you know that there are some words that we have to put an extra letter in just as a vowel blocker? And I would explain to them that the U is there. This word is not one that like I do very often, but I think it helps to stick in their brain a little more because you're explaining to them why we have these letters like this. Okay, and the last one, let's do choice. Choice. I say it, choice, they say it, we tap it. Choice. 3 sounds. Oh my goodness. Only 3 sounds with so many letters. Okay, choice. Ch. Simple. Oi. And we know that it has to be OI because OI represents oi in the middle. And then we have the S sound. So if I did an S, it would have to be like this. And I would say, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you for remembering your floss rule. But what is another way that we know to represent the S sound? And they could say, S. So with some of these, what I'm trying to do right now is show you how I would talk students through errors. So like if with guess, I would talk them through, oh, well, we have this extra letter. If they did S, I could talk them through another way of spelling it. And so, okay, so now if we know that this can make the sound, is it going to make this sound by itself? And they'd say, no, it has to be with an E, I, or Y. And we would talk about, okay, that's when we have that silent E on there because we know that it's going to help soften that C. Okay, so that is one way that we can promote orthographic mapping. And you can see how it really does play exactly into what the brain is doing because we're taking the sounds of words that we know, and then we are matching them to the symbols on a page. Let's talk about heart words. Heart words have been all the rage, and I love it. So if you're going to do flashcards, do heart words flashcards. And like Meredith said, do it after you introduce a word and always take it back to the sounds. What I want you to remember with heart words is this. Most words are only irregular by 1 sound. So when Tammy, I don't think I can do multisyllabic words tonight, but we are going to get into that in a couple months. I lost my train of thought. So when we are doing heart words, we still want to help children recognize the sound to symbol patterns because we know that's how we map things into our brains. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take a second to stop sharing, and I want to show you something. There's a question that says, where's the best spot to find all of the rules we might need to teach? So I learned these in my Orton Gillingham training. I am doing a Facebook Live. I don't know which month it is. It's next month or November, all about phonics rules. And so you can come and you can learn a lot. Okay, so I wanted to share with you guys a really cool website that you can use when you are doing heart words. I also, so Heidi from Dropping Knowledge with Heidi just came out with a bunch of new shirts, and I really need this sight word one, and I think all of you need it too. It says sight word, a familiar written word that is recognized instantly, automatically, and effortlessly without sounding it out or guessing. I was like, oh, that's perfect. But what I was going to show you is when I am doing a heart word and I am not quite sure about whether it's 1 sound or 2 sounds, I go to this website that's the 44 phonemes in English. So a lot of people have talked about the word where. So what I would do is I would scroll down to the vowels because it's the vowels that kind of jam us up a little bit. And I see, okay, is it on here anywhere? So I look down here and here's the IPA symbol. Here are the different graphemes that can represent the air, and then they even give you examples. So according, and I'm going to put this website up in the information as well. So according to this website, the air is one sound. That being said, if grown-ups are arguing about whether or not it's one sound or two, I don't know if it matters as long as we're like consistent with the way we teach it. So if you do hua, go for it. If you do hua, go for it, okay? But I use that site and I love that site. So let's practice mapping a couple of them. I like to do this with a dry erase board and colored squares, but since I'm on a computer, I'm just gonna use just these boxes and some cubes. So let's do the word where. I say it, where, you say it, where. And then you're gonna notice that we're using the same process that I used with, phonetically regular words. We're going to tap the sounds, hua, air, and we might use cubes, hua, air. So I'm going to teach it as two sounds. So what I do is this. I say, okay, friends, well, what do we know is going to make the hua sound? And they're going to say W. And I'm going to say, yes, that's true. It is W. What's another way that we know to make the hua sound? And they're going to say WH. Okay, and then the air sound. So I just looked it up and I'm going to treat it as one. And I'm going to say, well, what do you think would say air? And they might be like, R-A-R. And I'm going to be like, you guys are so smart. But in this one, since this was a heart word, we are going to have a part that doesn't play fair. I put a heart above it, and then I write the grapheme. Hua, air, where. And we practice reading it, writing it, spelling it until it becomes that automatic orthographically mapped in our head. Let's do two more words like this, and then we will move on. Monica has asked, how do we decide what words we tackle? So this is how I kind of think about it. When I'm introducing a new phonics rule, I will often do this practice. If I'm reviewing, I will often do this practice. So you can do it with new words, or you can do it with words that you're reviewing. I will say, keep in mind that these squares right here are scaffold. I don't want my children for the rest of their lives to have to use boxes in order to spell words. So we're using this to help them see that sound symbol correspondence, because otherwise, like when we're talking and we say itchy, we don't like segment it into sounds. So we're helping to make visual, like explicit, something that doesn't really happen with speech. I hope that makes sense. All right, the next word that we are going to do is, how do it works too? From, okay? So from, I say it, from, you say it, from, we tap it. Four sounds. So we could use our cubes, then we start by doing the sounds. I would skip this one for right now. And then I would come back to it and I would say, okay, so we have and what do we know makes the sound? And they'd say, you, Miss Campbell, obviously. And I would say, yes, brilliant children, it does. But this is a heart word, which means we know it's not going to play by the rules. So for this one, it is going to be an O. All right, and then the last word that we are going to do like this is we are going to do the word one. Everyone hates the word one. All right, but let's start like we start everything. I say it, one, you say it, one. Let's tap it. Okay, it has two sounds, so you could highlight it, do it however you want. Now, guys, I gotta be honest with you, kiddos. This word is tricky. What's the first sound we hear? That's right. And what normally makes that sound? And they're going to tell you W. Well, this is a heart word, so this first sound doesn't play fair. And then I'm going to ask them what says N. And they're going to say N. Yay, it does say N. But guess what? This word has both parts that don't play fair. So for this W sound, it is an O. And then it also has an E on the end. And remember earlier when we were talking about how words have to be both familiar and meaningful to us, this is a really good opportunity for us to go and look at the etymology of words. Because a lot of times, if I'm not quite sure why a word is spelled a certain way, it has to do with the word origin. So, for example, I think the word was night, like Knight, and my kiddos and I looked it up, and it comes from Old English where they used to pronounce the K. And so then we would like practice saying knight and trying to make it sound like we thought it would. And that's how we get it to be meaningful when it's something that doesn't really play fair. So the question is, do I tell children about schwa? I mention it. I do not explicitly teach the schwa until later because it is just, it's awful. Like it's the most common sound. Like I think 11% of sounds is the schwa. So out of 44 sounds, 11% of them are schwa. And they just mess everything up. They're just the bane of our existence. So there were a couple of other practices that I was going to talk about, but just for time's sake, because it's 8 o'clock and I don't want to take up too much of your time, I'm just going to go over rainbow sounds really quickly and I will let you go. So all of these activities, I've been using this, and we're going to do one more called rainbow sounds. It's basically the same thing, but it's a cool center activity to replace your typical rainbow write. You know, rainbow write, it was like every word or every letter was a different color. So Australia decodable readers, they were the ones that I first saw this with. So say I had the word starve, right? The kids would have to tap it. It's 4 sounds. So we'd box in 4 boxes. And then instead of doing a different color for every letter, we do a different color for every sound. So s, t, r, v. And I love this so much because if you were to just do if we were to just do rainbow writing like we typically do, they could just copy it. But by doing this, you know whether or not they have a good understanding of how the sounds work. So friends, that is all the time that we have. I hope that this was super practical for you and that you enjoyed it. Feel free to email me or DM me with any questions and I'll make sure that I get back to you. I really appreciate your time and I hope that tomorrow you can practice mapping some words and that you and your kiddos are going to orthographically map all 20,000 words in our vocabulary. Yep, I believe it. All right, thank you so much. Bye.